Hey, folks, thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Ecosystem Member Podcast. I am really glad to be starting off 2026 with a guest who I've had on my list of dream guests since day one of the podcast. He even talks about my initial pitch in this episode. Baratunde Thurston, host of America Outdoors on PBS, and an Emmy-nominated storyteller, producer, and writer, is our guest for today's episode. In addition to America Outdoors, he is the New York Times bestselling author of How to Be Black, former director of digital for The Onion, and a supervising producer for The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. His acclaimed projects include the How to Citizen podcast and the Current Life with Machines platform and podcast. On top of that, he's just a really funny dude. So in this episode, we talk about how America Outdoors helped shape his understanding of the spectrum of our human relationship with nature, his own relationship with nature, and how technology, another of his passion points, could maybe learn a bit from nature. We also spend some time talking about Project Interdependence, launching in 2026 this year to coincide with the 250th anniversary of the United States. Make sure to check that out at projectinterdependence.us. That's projectinterdependence.us. And make sure to check out the show notes for links to all the various articles and thinkers that Baratunde references in this episode. So without further delay, please enjoy the first episode of 2026 of the Ecosystem Member Podcast with Baratunde Thurston.
How can our politics feel as beautiful, as peaceful, as balanced as that walk in the woods? How can my relationship with the devices, and screens in my life evoke that sense of purpose, peace, belonging? It's not always peaceful, right? I'm not trying to romanticize. Sometimes nature's a hard ass, right? And it's very motivating, because it's so cold or it's so slippery or it's so whatever, but it's life, right?
Yeah.
It's like underneath of it all, it's very animating. And I would love that to be extended across all of our living systems, including the machine one.
Today on the Ecosystem Member Podcast, I'm very excited to be joined by one of my favorites, Baratunde Thurston, storyteller, producer, proud earthling. Thanks for joining us today, Baratunde.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for being an ecosystem member yourself. We're all part of the ecosystem if we're living, right?
Exactly. I love that. So let's start out with that. Like, how do you think about your relationship with nature? Has it evolved over time? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I increasingly am trying to consciously think of myself as a part of and not apart from nature. It's was a big part of my childhood. My mom was really into going outside and hiking and biking and camping, which is pretty rare in the DC hood that we grew up in. And she was a single mom, and we were the family on the house. They had a computer and also had a tent. Well, technically we didn't have one. She borrowed it from a coworker. Come to think of it, I got to keep it real. But I was really immersed. I did the Boy Scouts thing. And then I got really taken with tech and with speed and with getting good grades and good jobs and trying to, be a productive member of society, and found my way astray from a direct, constant relationship with the outdoors. Kept a bike always, got a surfboard along the way, but it wasn't really until I started making this show, America Outdoors, that I felt a big invitation to come home to Earth. And so where I am now, I'm not in production with that show right now, but it's never left me. And I keep a view of trees constantly just out of frame here. I try to take my shoes off and walk barefoot. I try to do a hike pretty regularly and just mentally orient myself to conceiving of myself as like a member of the community of life and not just the human world. But it's hard because there's real deadlines and there's real pressures and there's real incentives. And so it is a conscious attempt to constantly reset against the pressures of disconnection, which modern life is constantly applying to us.
Yeah, and you mentioned your show, America Outdoors. I was watching another interview you did about that, and you talk about it's a nature show, but it's really about people, or it's a lot about people.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about your relationship with nature. What did you learn about connecting with nature from all the amazing folks that you talked to? I think it was 2 seasons of the show.
Yeah, 2 seasons of the show, and then digital. So just to give a sense of scale, we told 100 stories, 100 distinct stories with different people. And it is a nature show about people. We don't do a lot of slow motion shots of butterflies and wild. It's not a wildlife show. I should put it that way. And those are great, especially the voiceovers are hilarious. But people have a voice too. So this was about expanding the story of who is connected to nature. And something that I learned that stood out, there's at least 100 things because everybody taught me at least one big thing. But I'm thinking about a man named Dan Devereaux who is in Maine. And we were doing an episode about living in the cold. And he operates an oyster farm. And he has not always done that. He used to be in the lobster game. And that game has changed. The lobster have moved north to Canada seeking asylum, I guess, or healthcare. But, because of the pressures we put on the planet, everything is on the move. And I have thought of climate change in many data-driven ways, intellectual ways, temperature, GDP, economic hit, migration, political issue areas, and some personal, right? Like disease or death or just cost of things. But identity wasn't on my own kind of bingo card as far as what climate changing means for human identity. And what I found through this experience with Dan and all the people of Maine, it's a simple question. What is a Mainer without lobster? And I recognize that our sense of self and belonging isn't just to our family line or our profession. It's to our land and the foods that we eat and the activities we engage in that are handed down from our family members. But the earth is an unnamed family member. And so when the earth shifts underneath your feet, then you're no longer stable. And a lot of attention has been given to economic instability as a source of political division and discord in the country and in the West in particular. But climate instability has a similar effect. And if you can no longer hunt the way you used to hunt or eat what you used to eat, then that is a threat to your identity. And then you become a prime target for a demagogue to come and tell you that that's so-and-so's fault. That's some Mexican Muslim migrant's fault. That's a trans kid's fault. As opposed to this is a collective failure of imagination in how we built our capitalistic system and our very distant relationship with Earth that we all have some opportunity to reset.
And that point on imagination is interesting because I think what we see in your show is there's a lot of ways people connect with nature. There's the outdoor activity people who, whether it's hunting or kayaking or whatnot, then there's, some of the indigenous groups you talk about more of a cultural relationship. And you just mentioned Dan Devereaux, who has a work relationship with the ocean. Was there anything you learned that struck you about the different ways that we connect? And I don't know, the question really isn't, is there one way better than the other? But I know sometimes indigenous connection is, I guess, somewhat fetishized and looked at and with a lot of reverence, both for a positive and negative, versus hunting, which is sort of an activity rather than a spiritual belonging. Did you notice any difference through those different ways that people connect?
Yes and no. And I think the spoiler is that it's a spectrum. The very first episode we did was in Death Valley, aka Timbisha. That's the proper name for the region. It's the name of the people. And that was the lesson. That was the immediate lesson, is the name of the people is the same as the name of the land. Okay, we're already in a different headspace here. And that the name Death Valley came from disconnected people. It came from folks who saw the outdoors as something to conquer and to pioneer and to expand upon and extract from. And they weren't prepared to meet the conditions. So some of them died and they unimaginatively called it Death Valley. And it should have been called we didn't prepare for the journey valley, right? We didn't pack right valley, right? We didn't understand the assignment valley would have been much better framing. And that's a mindset and a worldview difference. And one is much more European and colonial, and one is more indigenous and native. And what I experienced on the show, I think we directly encountered and worked with 6, maybe 7, oh my God, 6, 7 different indigenous nations on the show. And there was always this kin relationship, right? It's the earth, the salmon, the trees are familial relations. What I've found with many other folks is that there's an often unnamed connection and draw. There's just something about being outdoors that I need. I think about the formerly incarcerated folks who learned to fight wildfires in California state prisons for like pennies an hour.
Yeah.
And I thought of them as being exploited, and they were. And they were like, this was the best part of being in prison by far, because we got to be outside and shift our minds and name the birds and know the different sounds. So we all have some connection within us. The hunters who I worked with in New Mexico, they were tapped in, and it was about respect. It wasn't just about the kill and the taking. The very conservative Arkansas shooters who I was with had this relationship with the land. I think, and the last example that's on my mind is in Oregon. Kelly Delpit, these ranchers, white ass ranchers, who said, I mean that with love, but like they were like very, very just white. They weren't trying to pretend. They weren't pretendians, right? They were just like, we are who we are. And they were humbled with an initial vision to like take over this ranch and raise this number of head of cattle, blah, 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 blah. And it was through exposure to an indigenous teammate of theirs that they had to reset their way of thinking. And they become great advocates. The owner of the land said, I don't own this land. I'm a steward here. I'm taking care of this land for the otters in the creek and for the birds and for my neighbors downriver. That is the most like indigenous sounding thing. And it was authentic because he also recognized the higher economic value, the higher community value of living in relationship. So that was a nice is such an inadequate term. It was really a powerful, tangible window into what it looks like when we belong to the earth and not just live on it, and help us belong to each other. And there's a political connection through that. I also have described the show as like this merger of a show I used to do called How to Citizen, where citizen is a verb and it's all about active democracy, not inherited democracy. And this was like, well, this is like How to Citizen with nature, essentially. And so what's come of that is an exploration of the national story. You know, we're in a boatload of crises. It's no secret. It's pretty silly and stupid, much of the pains that we're experiencing now. And a lot of old systems are dying. Ways of doing business don't make any sense. Ways of relating to the earth are literally not sustainable. Too many people are hurting or dying or alone. And some of the counter to that existed and still exists in democracy that was already here before colonization. And there was indigenous democracy here that I've only recently come to understand, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, for those who want to get your web search skills up, or check out the article I've written in Atmos magazine, atmos.earth. It's really worth following up on. But there is this beautiful opportunity to revisit some deeper principles of democracy, because what they did, Rick, this is the exciting thing. This is the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk and Tuscarora nations. So some people will be familiar with some of those names. They designed their governance systems based on an observation of how nature self-governs. And they built something highly relational among the people with sovereignty and interdependence and balance, and highly relational between people and nature. So women had equal role in government. There's a reciprocal relationship with nature in government, 7-generation thinking in government. Those three alone would solve a lot of our political governance problems right now. Yeah. So there's a group of us working on this thing, Project Interdependence, to declare interdependence for America's 250, not just more separation and independence. And that's a really exciting thing that I think got rooted for me when I'm running around the country and starting to feel tangibly, not just read about, what these principles look like and how hard they are to live up to. Like the ones we've written down in our Western mind, they're very hard to live up to already. But if you set a higher bar, I think you have a higher chance of living to a higher standard.
So you mentioned your How to Citizen project.
Yeah.
I came to know you through your book, How to Be Black.
Yeah.
Which I really enjoyed reading. And you just mentioned this idea of interdependence and learning from nature. Are you going to write a book like How to Be Nature? Or do we need a book do we need that sort of guide? Or maybe that's what Project Interdependence in a different sort of verbiage is going to accomplish.
There's two books that are going to happen. One is not mine, but I am trying to help steward it and usher it into the world. Part of how I come to this knowledge of the indigenous democratic history, present and even future, is through relationship with humans, with indigenous elders from the Haudenosaunee world. And one person who's a member of that community is reissuing a book on American indigenous democracy, a call for interdependence. In the bicentennial in the late 80s, a book was published, Indian Roots of American Democracy, that told a lot of this story through scholarship and oral history. So we're helping him, Jose Barrero, update that book. New interviews, more women leaders, new context setting for the moment we're in with climate and economic tumult and democracy collapse for the rich opportunity. So that will be available next year. And
Awesome.
People can sign up at projectinterdependence.us to find out more and kind of get on the list. For me, I'll have some words in that book, but that is not my book. That's not my story to tell. What I'm working on is a new book. And it is in the how-to. I love a good how-to because people want to know how to do stuff. But I don't have a full title for it yet. But you can think of it as a reintegration of many of the stories that I've been telling since How to Be Black, that I've been able to get out in nature and learn from and with folks, also in this world of tech and this world of democracy. And we're not as separate as we're led to believe, as people or as stories. So I'm looking for, I think I've figured out a way to weave that together into something. And when that's more official, I'll let you know.
Awesome. And on that technology front, I saw a LinkedIn post you posted recently about a longer piece that's on your platform, Life with Machines, which people should also check out. We'll link all this stuff in the show notes.
Thanks.
And you had a quote in there that was comparing sort of natural features in the tech industry. And I know you've posted a lot about slow-moving tech being something that we should be thinking about. You wrote, the river wasn't trying to double its throughput. The mountains weren't chasing efficiency metrics. A cloud drifted overhead like it had never heard of move fast and break things. So we talked a little bit about imagination. Can nature, even for technology, be sort of like a point of creative imagination of how we think about or contextualize these things?
Yeah, it absolutely can, and it should be. I think we're being pulled, apart from each other, from ourselves, from the earth, and a lot of the wet dreams of the broligarchy are to monetize and financialize everything that comes naturally: air, water, health, but also thought now, right? Memory, community. These are things that are in abundance in the natural world. The ant doesn't pay for a colony membership, right? Yeah. They contribute to colony membership and they get something out of that. It's a reciprocal thing. So tech is, because it's been built on this foundation of a particular flavor of capitalism, risks just accelerating some of those harms. We're also in a reset moment, and there are other ways to do it. And so, I've been reading this guy, Sam Illingworth, on Substack, who has a whole thing called Slow AI that we try to cite him a lot. There's people who are developing AI in community to bridge the Haudenosaunee universe with this line of thinking. A Seneca scholar, no longer living, John Mohawk, wrote a lot about this, called them liberation technologies, those that are built to free you from dependence on corporate centralized power. They're developed kind of like by, of, and for the people. It's very small d democratic. And they're defined by the needs of the people as they express them themselves, not this top-down imposition and this kind of shock and awe, flood the zone where it's like every day a new thing. And we're this FOMO that's keeping us feeling like we got to keep up. But what are we trying to keep up with? We're right here. And I love tech. I'm wearing a bunch of it right now. So this is not an anti-technology screed, but it is an anti-dogma of speed is good for everything, that transaction is good for everything, that domination is good for everything. Like, we don't need to crush everything. We don't need to own everything. And we don't need to move fast in everything, that there's different speeds for different modes of life. And that range is the whole point. And that we've got to have some sovereignty and self-determination in this future as well. I don't want to have to check in with Sam Altman about what's on my mind. That's not it. I'd rather check in with the tree, quite honestly. And there's a lot of intelligence in nature. On that show, Life with Machines, we spoke with Asa Raskin, part of the Earth Species Project, which is literally understanding animal communications. There's Project SETI, which is understanding plant communications and mycorrhizal networks of fungi and trees and how they live. It's all very interdependent. They help each other out more. Janine Beignet says it's much more the snuggle is real than the struggle is real when you look to nature. There's still predator and prey, but there's also balance.
Yeah, totally. And so, sort of bring our conversation with a close. This might be a little bit touching on that interdependence, but I saw your keynote. I was there in person in Austin in 2012 at South by Southwest. How to read the world.
How to read the world, yeah.
Thinking about this relationship with nature, relationship with technology, our role as citizens, like, you're an award-winning storyteller. Like, what is the story do you think like people need to hear, or that people need to sort of create about our relationship with nature going forward, especially in the face of climate change?
That we are it, right? That I think we're out of balance in all of our relationships across these key areas. The technology relationship is way out of balance. We're not self-determinative mostly. We're being dragged into a future not of most of our choosing. And that transactionalization of everything gets accelerated in a techno-fascist future. So there's a challenge there, to put it mildly. Our democracy is clearly absolutely challenged. It's the one thing everybody in our democracy can agree on, is that it's busted on all sides of everything. And our relationship with the earth is challenged. I don't think that we can create the future that we deserve without getting in more right relationship across all of those. And I think that they feed off of each other. That when, I think you said this in the email pitch to me when you quoted Robin Wall Kimmerer. When we heal the earth, we heal ourselves. It's something that I heard from Louis Hina on the Rio Grande in the New Mexico episode. When we heal ourselves, we heal the earth, right? Like, we are each other. And so it feels overwhelming, the level of crises that we're facing. The good news and opportunity is that once we start making progress in the right direction in one of these areas and recognize the link between them, then the whole thing can come unraveled and re-ravel in a better way. And so if we start to move with and among and belong to nature, that's going to help our politics, right? We start to govern from a natural basis. There's one of the partners and colleagues I'm working with, Amelia Rose Barlow. She's all about like nature states, not nation states. And like, what if we govern by there's bioregionalism as a whole thing. And it's like these political lines are made up, but the river's real. Yeah. So if we started to see ourselves in that sense of community, made time and space for it, we'd care for each other better. Our politics would reflect that. And if we can build the technologies to simply enhance the relationships that we value, not replace them, that's a good threshold. Like if the time with this machine comes at the expense of quality real time with someone you love, including yourself, including a watershed, then that's a problem. But it doesn't have to, right? It can also teach you more about yourself and about your loved one, the human and your loved one, the four-legged one, this ground squirrel I'm looking at right now who's ripping up my yard. But I love you, buddy. I love you. Just we gotta have more of a relationship because I'm not trying to. Here's the best news. I've been wanting hawks to find their way to my property so that they can naturally help balance, because I don't want to be shoving a bunch of poison in the ground and whatnot. Yeah. And we have at least one red-breasted hawk that I saw perched on a wire just last week. And I'm like, they're over there. Your lunch is right here.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. My wife and I had our first kid about 8 weeks ago now.
Whoa.
And we brought him into the room that we were in, and two red-tailed hawks sort of landed right outside the window. And I was just like, oh, this is so right. This is a beautiful thing. If you allow your imagination to recognize that connection of we can actually work together, and if we recognize what role the squirrel and the hawk play together, then we can figure out how to facilitate that. And we can be a part of that, even though we're not, we can be a part of it, not overstaying our role, but we can help facilitate that. So
and we'll
I love this idea of interdependence.
And welcome to your young one. That's a big deal. And I think those hawks were like welcoming. It's like, we got a new member of the family. You got to show up. That's really cool. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. I think when I think about how I feel in a beautiful natural space, could be like a springs in the desert. I'm out here in the Palm Springs, Coachella Valley. amongst some oasis or an icy tundra. Like there's ways to be and feel that I think we could ask of the other systems we're a part of. How can our politics feel as beautiful, as peaceful, as balanced as that walk in the woods? How can my relationship with the devices, and screens in my life evoke that sense of purpose, peace, belonging? It's not always peaceful, right? I'm not trying to romanticize. Sometimes nature's a hard ass, right? And it's very motivating, because it's so cold or it's so slippery or it's so whatever, but it's life, right?
Yeah.
It's like underneath of it all, it's very animating. And I would love that to be extended across all of our living systems, including the machine ones and the political ones.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Baratunde, for taking time to chat today. Yeah. I can't wait for folks to listen to this. I'm such a big fan, and I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for finding me, and thanks for doing what you do. I look forward to checking out more of these episodes.